Hey, what's up everybody? This is Suburbs501 and I recently started playing Escape From Tarkov again and I've been enjoying it, so I wanted to start doing something that I want to do last wipe but I never got around to it, and that is make build videos and show the absolute best you can make every weapon, and then possibly down the road start making budget weapons or different variations of those. And what's a better way to start the best version of every weapon than going with one of the top meta weapons currently in the game, which is the M4. So I'm just going to go through all of the weapon parts and then I'm going to go over some variations that can give you guys some options without changing the weapon a ton. And with all of these builds and with how the game is right now, depending on what rank you have with what dealers, some of the parts can be ridiculously expensive, like a bunch of the parts can be over 100k. So if there's parts that are just ridiculously expensive and you don't have the max rank vendor to be able to buy a really cheap version of that weapon part, you can definitely look at some different options. There are definitely a ton of different options with a ton of these meta builds that won't change the stats of the weapon that much, but could be a massive reduction in cost. So first off, we have the EOTech HHS1, and this is pretty much the only site that actually shows a recoil reduction when you put it on for whatever reason. Sites aren't really going to change your weapon that much. You can get some more ergo going with other sites, or a very slight reduction in recoil going with one of these. Overall for the sites, just go with whatever you like using. I used to really like the HHS ones, but I definitely have switched to using some different sites, usually more just using red dot sites, or sometimes I'll use a validate site for a little bit longer range, but that's pretty much whatever you want. It's not going to change a weapon that much. And we do have the mag pull rear sight and front sights. These just add some ergo onto the weapon. Then we have the SAI 14.5 inch QD rail foregrip. So next up we have the Raptor charging handle. Then we have the 370 millimeter barrel. Next up we have something that's a bit weird. So we are using the SI Advanced Receiver Extension buffer tube, the anodized red version. If you went back to last wipe, these things were a lot more expensive, 100k, and the normal not anodized red version of this were only like 10k or something like that. But now if you don't have mechanic 4 to get the normal version from him, that's like 10k. The normal non-red versions are like 100k in the flea market every time I look at them, and the red version, which is better, it gives additional accuracy and muzzle velocity, they're only like 60 to 70k usually when I look at them. Whichever one's cheaper, I'd recommend getting. The red versions are better, and every time I look, they're cheaper. That's the one I'm going with. Then we're using the HKE1, which is also incredibly expensive if you can't buy it from a vendor. I think these things are like 100k or usually 115k, something like that, somewhere in that range. If they're super expensive and you want to spend that, there are a few that have very similar performance stats, especially in recoil. So look around. If these are super expensive and you don't have the vendor to be able to buy them, look around and you can probably get one that doesn't change your stats that much for much cheaper. Then we are using the PMags. These things just don't reduce your ergo by a ton like the other 60 round mags do. The silver 60 round mags reduce your ergo by 3 compared to the mag pull ones, but magazines are whatever you want to use. If you only want to use 30 rounders, you can use those. The PMags are just the best 60 rounders you can get. Then we're using the HK Ergo PSG1 pistol grip. Now next we're going the Victor Mur 1S for the upper receiver. Then for the grip we're using the Magpul M-Lock 4.1 inch guide to put the grip on. If you're going for the lowest possible recoil you can possibly get, you're going with the Zenit RK2, but I don't think a lot of people use this when they're using the best meta weapons. Usually you'd use something like the Zenit RK1, which is the grip that sticks out the side, and the reason for this is you're gonna get 6 more ergo with this grip instead of the RK2, and you're only gonna have an increase of like 1 to 2 vertical recoil, so the recoil isn't gonna change much. It's probably not gonna be noticeable when you're actually playing, but the 6 ergo could definitely be something that's noticeable. You can go whichever one you want, but usually I'd probably recommend going the RK1 because it's overall going to be the better choice. Now next we're going to be using the JB Enterprises Gas System 5B. Next we have the tactical device. Now if you want to use a tactical device you can use pretty much anything you want. Since it's a meta weapon, I'd recommend getting one with the IR lasers so people can't see it. Using usually just the laser dots aren't that smart because you can still see them through walls and they're still pretty easy to see. I've killed so many fully geared people because they have a laser pointer on and you can clearly see it from somewhere and know exactly where they are because they're pointing a laser through a hallway or something, or through a door that just lets you know exactly where they are. So I'd not recommend using one of those, but I'd recommend using an IR laser if you're going to use a tactical device at all. So next we're using the SAI jailbreak, which is a pretty big reduction in recoil. That's one of the reasons the M4s are such a good weapon, because they get to have this pretty much on top of everything else, letting them get this ridiculously low recoil. If you want to use silence, that is going to up your recoil quite a bit, like silencers do with most of the weapons in the game, and you're not going to be able to use the jailbreak with that, so just keep that in mind, that you will have a bit higher of recoil if you want to use a silencer. We're using the Bullitech ST60112 flash hider, which is the best flash hider. Again, if you want to switch up to use a silencer, which a lot of people still do and is still a very valid choice, you're going to have some higher recoil. So that is pretty much every best part for the best M4 you can possibly make. And like I said, if there are any parts that are ridiculously expensive and you don't have max out dealers yet, go look through the different parts and see if there's one that gives similar stats, because most of these parts have something that are pretty similar in stats, just a little worse, and they'll be, you know, like 100-200% cheaper. So it'll go down from a 500 plus K weapon if you're buying it off from the flea market to half that if you switch up the parts just a little bit. That's pretty much all I want to go over today. Subscribe if you want to see more EFT videos. I'm going to be trying to do a ton of builds, budget builds for guns, best builds for guns, and then just some other variations on builds. So subscribe if you want to see that, and thanks for watching.
Петух! Да вот он! Сука, ёбнули нашего! Вон он! гнида! Ты куда пошел? Вот он! Гнида! О, вижу их! Пацаны, да он там совсем ёбу дал! Не надо его! Вон он! А ты пид... Да? Вон оно, пыль!